What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope we're all doing well. So we're going to talk the draft today, just the draft today, and throughout the week we'll get into a bunch of other stuff. We have the NBA and NHL playoffs and some wrestling and all the other cool stuff. So why don't I just go over, give my thoughts on all the quarterbacks that were drafted. There are a bunch of them. I'm going to go over just overall picks that I liked from days 2 and 3. Of course, I recapped the first round last week. The day after on Friday afternoon, and then a couple of drafts that I don't like picking winners and losers of a draft. You technically don't know until we hit the field, so I don't like doing that. But there were a couple of drafts I thought stood out on paper, so I will shout those out at the very end. But let's get started. So quarterbacks. First pick was Cam Ward, of course. He was the first pick in the entire draft. Of Cam Ward, talked about him and Jackson Dart, who I'm going to talk about next, on Friday. But overall, I didn't think he was worth a first-round pick. He was I do think he's the second best quarterback in this class. However, probably shouldn't have gone one. I get why Titans made the pick to go quarterback, because you cannot run back Will Levis again. However, I think in the right system, he can be a pretty good quarterback. Maybe like a Jordan Love kind of guy. Guy who's got a really strong arm. Maybe develops into a decent leader. And turnovers are a bit of a concern, but overall he's a very good quarterback that you can win with, at least in the regular season and maybe in the early rounds of the playoffs. I'm not sure if you'll win a Super Bowl with him. However, at his very worst, I do think he will flame out of the league very quick at his absolute floor. Kind of like a Jamarcus Russell-esque kind of guy. Not necessarily that as much of a disaster as Jamarcus Russell, but a guy who really struggles to adapt just to the NFL in general. Doesn't ever really become a true leader. Can't stop turning the ball over, and within a few years is not really a household name, and within a decade is just completely gone from the league altogether. So it's the reason I don't like this as the first pick is because it's not that it's boomer bust. It's like kind of boomer bust, because at his best, I think he's a very good quarterback. But I wouldn't even say great. At his worst, he's not going to be in the league very long. However, obviously you saw what they did with Shedeur Sanders. Him saying like he seems very dedicated to his craft. You never know. I mean, the situation in Tennessee, he's got an offensive-minded coach there in Brian Callahan. I think the offensive line will be better this year for the Titans. He's got a good running game. Weapons overall, it's really just Calvin Ridley, and then they recently brought in Tyler Lockett a couple of days ago. Other than that, and the defense is kind of a work in progress. So, I'm not sure what I like. However, in the coming years, if they continue to build on that, never know. So, that's Cam Ward. As for Jackson Dart, I liked that he went in the first round. I thought he was a late first round pick. Tried to move back up and get him. My concern is that room is really busy. You got Russell Wilson, you have Jameis Winston, you even have Tommy DeVito there. I think it's going to be hard for him to get reps in that room because it's so busy. You have the guy, Russell Wilson, who was at the end of his career, not making a ton of money on a one-year deal, but so you brought him in to start. He's a former Super Bowl MVP. You have Jameis Winston, a guy who's been in the league for a long time. He's a former first overall pick. The guy's been in the league for a very long time. And even Tommy DeVito, the guy's got a couple of years on him. He isn't good at all. He's not even going to probably even be in the NFL, but he's there. So I don't know how he's going to get a ton of reps. And the only weapon he really has is Malik Neighbors. The offensive line is really concerning to me. So I honestly don't love the situation for Jackson Dart as much as he fits Brian Daboll's system. I don't know how much longer Daboll's going to be there. If they have another, 3, 4, 5 in season, him and Shane might be up the door. So I don't know. I don't know how much longer Daboll and his staff are going to be there, and do we trust the Giants with John Mara and company to, if they were to fire Brian Daboll, to find a coach that still fits, what Jackson Dart's looking for? I would say no. So I don't love the situation for Jackson Dart. However, at his best, I do think he's a Jared Goff kind of quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. He's got a pretty solid arm. He's very accurate with the ball. He's a good decision maker. He's a half-decent athlete. A quarterback that I do think fits Daboll's system very well. And very good quarterback you can win with. I'm not sure if he's elite. Probably isn't elite, but a very good quarterback. At his worst, he's probably like a Gardner Minshew. Fine, good guy. Fine, like backup fill-in starter for a few games here and there, but not a starter in this league. So it's not the worst floor in the world. However, he's a Giants also trade up to get him in the first round. Dart to the Giants, and then these are the rest of the quarterbacks are as followed. Tyler Shook out of Louisville was the second round pick, 44th overall by the New Orleans Saints. I really don't understand what the Saints saw in him. So, look, I'm not a Shador guy or really a fan of any of the other quarterbacks in this class. I'm not really a fan of Jalen Milroe. I'm not as much of a fan as I was earlier of Dylan Gabriel. Even Quinn Ewers, who I've been relatively high on, I don't think his ceiling is that high. But all the guys I just listed were better than Tyler Shook. I don't see it with him. He's pretty small. His tape isn't very good. I just don't get what they saw in this guy. He doesn't have a great arm. He's not very careful with the ball. I don't really get what they saw with him. To be honest, I think the Saints are tanking. I think they realize we've been bad for so long. We've been a joke for so long. So they decided, let's just find some random first-year coach who will take this job. Obviously, Derek Carr is now hurt. They probably knew about this for a while. They're just releasing it now. And let's, let, these quarterbacks compete. Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, and the draft pick winds up being Tyler Shook compete for the job. They'll win 3-4 games. They'll have a top 5 pick next year, and you take your guy next year. Also, they finally will get out of cap hell next year. But this really didn't make any sense. Like, I don't get it. He's not very good. I really think he was like my quarterback, like 9 or 10 maybe in this draft. I don't get it. Third round pick was Jalen Milroe. Seattle Seahawks take him in the third round. Again, I don't love it. I think this is a reach. I thought Milroe, the third rounder. To me, he was a 5th or a 6th round pick. I don't think he's very good. He kind of reminds me of what we've seen out of Justin Fields so far. You never know, Fields is still young. Maybe he ends up improving this year with the Jets, but don't know that for sure, obviously. He's just, very good athlete. He's got some nice physical tools. Can make a lot of plays with his legs, but really isn't a good passer. I don't see him lasting super long as a starter in this league. He may be half-decent backup because he's maybe somewhat difficult to game plan for, but with Jalen Milroe, I thought they reached a bit here. So I had like a 5th or 6th round grade on him. He was my QB7 in this year's class, and he was the 4th one off the board. I thought a bit of a reach. And I'm on Seattle taking a flyer on a quarterback. Sam Darnold, although he is still young, he's even last year did not prove to be elite. Obviously, he flamed out at the very end of the season and ended in the playoffs. He signed for 3 years. Not bad to take a flyer if Darnold proves to furthermore not to be a franchise quarterback where he regresses. You want to move off him maybe before his contract is up in the next 2 or 3 years. You have a guy there, but I just don't think this is a great value. Dylan Gabriel was also a 3rd round pick. He goes 2 picks later to the Cleveland Browns. I don't hate Dylan Gabriel. I think he could be a serviceable starter, but just being in Cleveland, that's how you kill a guy's career. Gabriel, he's very small, doesn't have the best arm. He is very accurate with the ball. He's a pretty solid decision maker, but he probably went around earlier than I projected. I thought he was a 4th round talent. And just being in Cleveland, an undersized guy with not a ton of arm power in Cleveland, that doesn't really bode well. I don't think he fits in Cleveland. I don't know where anybody fits in Cleveland. Not just dumpster fire that is the Cleveland Browns. I didn't love this by the Cleveland Browns. That brings us to Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, of course, the polarizing guy out of Colorado, of course, son of NFL Hall of Famer and all-time great corner Deion Sanders. Was projected to go very high in the 1st round, and he tumbles all the way to the 5th round, 6th pick of round 5, pick 144. Cleveland Browns scoop him up. This, to me, was confusing. Okay, look, I was very low on Shedeur. I had a 5th round grade on Shedeur Sanders. I never got why he was getting the hype to be a top 3, 5, 10 pick in this draft. I thought he belonged in the 5th round, to be honest, this whole time. I did not think he would even sniff the 5th round. I thought he would be, at the very least, a 1st-round pick, if not at least a top 10 pick. I was pretty sure he was going to be in the top 10, definitely in the 1st round. Did not think he would be there in the 5th round, but if I was Vegeta, I wouldn't touch him until the 5th round. So I actually technically don't have a problem with him dropping. I mean, people freaking out. They're blaming this and that for Shador. Are people this stupid? Let me get this straight. First of all, people were saying because he's black, that's why he fell. First of all, the first pick in the draft was Cam Ward. Like, that's just stupid and pathetic, and just, you're making excuses. Like, stop doing it like that. That's so dumb. It's very clear. A lot of teams did not like the tape on this kid. Yes, he has a talented arm. I get that. But he's also not the best decision maker, has not shown any ability to be a leader. This is a guy, remember, this is a kid who grew up in mansions, and the kid drives a Bentley. He's, what, 22 years old? He's driving a freaking Bentley? I mean, he made, what, like $6.5 million playing college football for 3 years? Like, the guy's coming into the NFL already a millionaire. And so a lot of teams need to be swayed by the interviews, and he interviewed so pathetically bad that he scared teams away. The only thing that really liked his tape, that was picking high in the 1st round, that was willing to take him in the 1st round, was the New York Giants. And days before the draft, he showed up unprepared to a interview, and Brian Dable called him out, and from there it kind of went downhill. You know, probably because he showed up with his hat sideways and his 9 chains and being all nonchalant, like, oh, you know who I am, take me or don't take me. It's just like, dude, I'm going to be drafting you. You're going to be, I'm the, I guess the employer here. It's hard to really say employer-employee when it comes to professional sports. Not really the way it works, but still, like, technically you're working for us. Like, I don't get it. Why people are so confused that he fell. Well, he's not the first guy to, like, in NFL history to fall in the draft. Every year, there's at least one guy we all think is going to go in the 1st round, and he falls in the draft. In fact, there's usually one guy every year we think, oh yeah, they're surefire 1st round pick. In fact, they may even go top 10. And then the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round comes around, and they're still there. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, they were picked 126? I thought that'd be like the 8th pick in the draft. Happens every year. We thought that, because a lot of times because of the media. 2 years ago, we all thought Will Levis was going to be a top 10 pick. And he ended up being a 2nd rounder. Why? Because teams saw through the media BS, and they saw that he's just not a talented quarterback. His arm talent isn't that impressive. He's a rack with the ball, not a good decision maker, not really a true leader. Cares more about, just banging hot ladies off the field than actually playing football. No, and look what it resulted in. He's been horrible for the Titans. But we're 2 years after they drafted him, they I think reached on a 2nd or 3rd round talent quarterback at the 1st pick. You look at I can't hard to think of it on the spot, but this happens every year. Malik Willis is another one, because they're like, oh, he can run, and because he can run a lot. People were infatuated by the athleticism, but the NFL team saw through it and saw that his arm talent was not going to carry over. He was not ready to start right now, and he was very erratic with the ball. He wasn't a great decision maker. I mean, he played at Liberty, so he played nobody in college. Kind of similar thing to Zach Wilson. Like, he went to BYU, played nobody in college. Like, yeah, and then same thing with Shador Sanders. The media hyped him up because of his last name, and then teams are like, all right, he's got a pretty good arm, but he's also not very accurate with the ball. He's not a good decision maker. He's a terrible leader. He comes off as very arrogant and brash. Like, no, I'm not taking that guy in the 1st round. I'm just not going to do it. And also, they were going to have to deal with the extra media attention. And if you're drafting him right now, he's not starting right away. He's going to be at best your 2nd quarterback, or maybe even your 3rd quarterback on the roster right now, for at least the first part of the season. And he's going to bring all this extra media attention, all this extra attention from the media. He's not going to play to start the season. Also, you got to have to deal with his dad, like, meddling your business. Dion is not blameless here by any sense, okay? He's not blameless by any sense, okay? No, look, Dion is an all-time great player. No one is doubting that at all. He is, to me, the greatest corner in the history of the league, and in fact, I think he's one of the 10 greatest players in the history of the NFL. being said, no one wants to deal with him, meddling in their business. This guy's going on social media saying like, oh, bragging about how, oh, we're gonna pick where he go. He's gonna be top 5. Oh, at one point he tweeted out that like, oh, anyone who was drafted by Cleveland should pull Eli Manning, and that story is Cleveland Brown. Like, I love Deion, all-time great player. He's obviously coaching Colorado right now. I think overall he has done a good job there. But you're pulling like stuff that not even LeVar Ball was pulling with Lonzo Ball a bunch of years ago. So, on the basketball side, of course. So I just don't get it. And another thing, Mel Kiper should never be on television ever again. What he did was the most unprofessional thing I've seen an ESPN employee do ever. Freaking, with his love for Shedeur Sanders, like freaking, screaming at the NFL. So, oh, they've been clueless with the quarterback development for 50 years. This is the same guy who thought Mitch Trubisky was going to be great. He thought Zach Wilson was going to be great. He said, if Jimmy Clausen is not a really good quarterback, I will retire. 20 years later, he's still not retired. Like, what are we doing here? Like, Mel Kiper, he either was doing this on purpose to try and stay relevant, or he just is just unprofessional as hell and just clearly is just not needed on television anymore. I don't need him on television anymore. If he wants to put out his big boards every year, fine. He wants to put out his mock drafts every year, fine. He wants to give his draft grade after the draft every year, fine. But I don't want to see this guy on television ever again. That was absolutely disgusting and absolutely terrible. That was as unprofessional as it gets. And kudos to Reese Davis for giving it back to him and staying professional and putting him in his place. That was, someone needs to do that. What Mel Kiper did was just very unprofessional, and he should never be on television ever again. But moving forward, 6th round, he used to Kyle McCord. I mean, the rest of these guys is all 6th and 7th round guys. Kyle McCord, I think he's Jameis Winston 2.0. I think I was my quarterback 8 or 9 in this class. And he was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th quarterback off the board. So that was where I had him going. He's got a very good arm. That being said, he is a turnover machine. So he goes to the Eagles. That's probably the best situation for him, to be honest, with how many weapons they have there. Nick Sirianni's offense. Well, to me, he's a backup in this league. He screams like a Josh McCown kind of guy. He'll be in the league for a while as a backup, but not necessarily a good quarterback. But he's a good guy, but not a starter in this league. 4 picks later in the 6th round, we had Will Howard go off the board to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think Will Howard's that good. He just doesn't really have anything that's super attractive. He doesn't have the best arm. It's just okay. He's pretty accurate, but not a great decision maker. He's just an okay athlete. He screams. He seems like a Nick Foles. Like, he screams Nick Foles. Just good guy. He'll be in the league for a while. It's a guy who played a lot of college football moves at Kansas State for a while. Of course, won a national championship with Ohio State last year. But I think he will be a solid backup in the NFL. Like a Nick Foles kind of guy, but don't think he is a starter in the NFL. I got Will Howard. I think I ranked him like my 9th quarterback, something like that. He goes from the 6th round. He was the 8th guy off the board. Also in the 6th round, Robbie Leonard gets taken by the Indianapolis Colts. What is that quarterback room? Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, and Robbie Leonard. I do not. That's a wow quarterback room. I don't see it with Robbie Leonard. He's a poor man Justin Fields to me. He, very good athlete, can make a lot of plays with his legs, but God, he's just a terrible thrower of the football. Just terrible thrower of the football. Now he's in Indianapolis. He might be like my quarterback 11 in this class. He's not good. Then also from 6th round was Graham Mertz of Florida going to Texas. Going to the Texans. If he's in the league in 5 years, I'd be surprised. He's not good. I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't think I ranked him. He's not very good. Yeah. Also in the 6th round, we had Cam Miller out of North Dakota State. I don't even know who that is. He goes to the Raiders. It's the most Raiders player to pick ever. He'll be out of the league probably in 4 or 5 years as well. I did not have a drafted grade on him. Curtis Rourke was a 7th round pick by the San Francisco 49ers. He was out of Indiana. I had him, I think, is like my quarterback 10 or something like that. I don't think he's good, but he'll stick around the league as like a second or third quarterback for a while. And he's in Sanford, in college, got hands off him. They do still have a bunch of weapons over there with Christian McCaffrey, with Brandon Ayuk if he's healthy, with Ricky Pearson, with George Kittle. So actually not a bad spot for him, but I don't think he's all that good. Also going in the 7th round was Quinn Ewers to the Miami Dolphins. I don't understand. The only 2 quarterbacks in this class that won big games at all in college were Quinn Ewers. He won some big games in some conference championship games and in some playoff games. And Will Howard, who won a national championship last year. Look, again, I just said I don't think Will Howard is a starter in the NFL, and I think Quinn Ewers' ceiling is pretty limited. But Quinn Ewers, who's my third best quarterback in this class, he started at Ohio State. He ended up transferring to Texas 2 years ago. Has a great season. Was my quarterback 1 heading into this year. Did struggle a little bit last year. However, I think in the right situation, he will be a good quarterback in this league. He's got a pretty solid arm. He's decently accurate. He's not a great athlete, and he's a bit of a turnover machine. He's got to work on the turnovers. However, these are things that can be fixed in the NFL. I think that he's at his best, he's like, I want to even go as far as Jared Goff, to be honest. He could be like a Baker Mayfield kind of guy to me. That's probably his ceiling. Guy who's a solid quarterback. He can get you to playoffs. Probably won't get you much further. At his worst, he's probably like a slightly better Mac Jones, I guess. If that makes any sense. Maybe a Derek Carr, like a guy. Derek Carr, I guess, like his middle ground. Serviceable starter. Can make a bad team look kind of competitive. Can make a mediocre team maybe make the playoffs. But nothing more than that. But I was utterly shocked that he made it to the 7th round. And again, the only 2 quarterbacks in this class that won big games in college. Will Howard, 6th round draft selection. Quinn Ewers was the 7th round. The 7th round pick was the last quarterback taken in this entire class. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 quarterbacks taken before Quinn Ewers. Ewers was the 13th quarterback taken in this class. And I thought he was my third. I had my QB3. Why he was the 13th guy off the board in the last quarterback taken in a weak class is beyond me. I don't understand. Makes 0 sense. However, I do like where he lands in Miami. Tua is very injury prone. I still think he's 1 hit away from his career being over, unfortunately. Quinn Ewers is probably better than Zach Wilson right now. Zach Wilson, as we all know, is absolutely terrible. So he's probably the second best quarterback on that roster. Tua, I'm sure, will miss a few games this year. Ewers, I think, will get to play this year. And I think sooner or later, I could see him possibly taking over the Miami Dolphins starting quarterback job. I think he'll be a starter in his league. He's not a great one, but I think for a little while, at least, will be a starting quarterback in this league. He goes to the Miami Dolphins. Those are all the quarterbacks that were taken. Let's go over just overall picks on days 2 and 3 that I liked. Starting with the Texans taking Jaden Higgins in the 2nd round. We're going to start with the 2nd round. Higgins was a receiver. I think he was at Iowa State. And overall, I think he's a solid receiver. A solid 2nd or 3rd receiver. Texans lost a lot of receivers. Stephon Diggs signed in New England. Tank Dell probably not going to play this year. I get you at Christian Kirk, but he's also coming off an injury. Now we have, a nice trio of weapons for C.J. Stroud with, of course, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and Jaden Higgins. I like the Seahawks to pick afterwards at 235, taking Nick Manawari, the safety out of South Carolina. I think he's very good. He's one of the best safeties in this class, for sure. And I actually thought he could have slipped into the back end of the 1st round. Didn't end up happening. They got him at 35. I think that's a very good value. Seattle's has invested a lot of draft capital into that secondary with Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. And now you add Nick Manawari, safety out of South Carolina. Browns, who had a weird draft taking 2 quarterbacks. You trade up a 2nd pick. Get Mason Graham, which I actually thought was a smart move. And to open up the 2nd round, they took Carson Schweizen. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Schweizinger? Linebacker out of UCLA. I didn't love that. I think that was a bit of a reach, but taking Quinshon Judkins, the running back of Ohio State was a really good pick. He's a really explosive back. He's very tough to tackle. He's a good yak guy. I think he'll be a very good running back in the NFL. He was my running back. I ranked him as my third best back in this class, behind Ashley Gentine and my Elmayer and Hampton, who of course were first round picks. I think this is a good pick by the Browns. Obviously, he have not re-signed Nick Chubb, which I'm not surprised. His career is probably basically over. Age, the injuries that he's had. But Quichon Jenkins to the Browns. I think he will be their running back one this year over Jerome Ford. I like that pick. I also want the Patriots taking his teammate Trevion Henderson, also running back out of Ohio State. He's a little bit more well-known because he played at Ohio State longer. He's not as flashy and as explosive as Judkins. I do think he will be a solid back in this class. He was my fourth running back ranked, and he was the 4.0 off the board. Kind of what I expected. Henderson's a very solid back, and he's not flashy by any means, but to me, he's like a Najee Harris kind of guy. Just a solid back. He'll give you give him holes. He can give you 220 to 220, maybe 250 carries. He'll give you 4 yards a carry, about 1,000 yards a season. He's just a solid back, and I think the Patriots need another running back. Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is a really good pass-catching back, but I don't think he's a 3-down back. Antonio Gibson's got a lot of fumbling issues, and you bring in Trevion Henderson. I think it's a really solid back. I believe the Bears taking Luther Burden, the wide receiver. I think he was out of Missouri. I think he's a solid receiver. I'm not surprised he slipped to the second round. A little undersized, but I think a solid slot guy. Like he's another receiver. They have not re-signed Keenan Allen yet. We don't know what Rome Odunze is going to turn into. Need somebody else behind DJ Moore. And now they get that in Luther Burden. Caleb Williams, all 17 needs now, so he better take a step forward, otherwise he's in here for me. Let's just say that. Jets take tight end Mason Taylor out of LSU with the 42nd pick. I like this pick for the New York Jets. I think he's a solid tight end. So it works out because they were targeting Tyler Moore in the first round and end up going Armand Membu to fill up the offensive line, and now you take a solid tight end in round 2 in Mason Taylor. Hopefully he ends up being good because he doesn't know how to get tight end in a very long time. Dallas Cowboys at 44 take Donovan Enzaraku, a defensive end in Boston College. I like his pick. This is a good value. I thought he would go at the very end of the first round, end up slipping into the second round. Dallas takes him. Jerry's been kind of operating on Jerry time these last few years, kind of doing whatever he so pleases. They can use another pass rusher after losing DeMarcus Lawrence for agency to the Washington Commanders. And they get that replacement with Dominic Enzaraku. You have him across from Micah Parsons. That could be a very good duo down the line. He was the guy that I liked. Will Johnson was the 47th pick in the second round, but he was on the Cardinals. I get why he slid. Apparently, he had some sort of knee injury. But assuming Travis Hunter is a full-time receiver, I thought he was the best corner in his class. I think he's very good. I think he'll be a very good corner in the NFL. Arizona takes him. I like Arizona definitely addressing their defense in this offseason. You get Josh Sweat in for agency, and then now you have Walter Nolan in the first round of the draft. In the second round of the draft, you take Will Johnson, who I think is a very good corner. 2 picks later, at pick 49, Bengals took linebacker Demetrius Knight out of South Carolina. I like that pick as well. I Bengals did a good job. You get 2 solid defenders of your first 2 picks. People said this about Shamar Stewart. I think he's a bit of a project, but I do think will turn into a very good pass rusher down the line. And Knight, when it comes to inside linebackers, he was probably the second best one in this class, to be honest. Outside Jihad Campbell, of course, he goes 31 to the Philadelphia Eagles. No, I think he's very good. I'm a little surprised he even lasted to 49. I thought he'd be a little bit earlier in the second round, maybe even slipping into the very end of the first round. But Knight goes to the Bengals. And yeah, Nick Scorton go 51st overall to the Carolina Panthers, a pass rusher out of Texas A&M. I like him a lot. I thought there was a chance maybe he goes in the very end of the first round. Didn't happen. Very, very good athlete. For whatever reason, when these guys like Will McDonald and Jared Verse, Nick Scorton, another one like that, even James Pierce, when it comes to how long he'll least on the field, I know he's got some stuff off the field that he's dealing with. For whatever reason, the NFL doesn't value these guys very high because of how undersized they are. However, most of them turn out to be really good. Will McDonald has been really good for the Jets. Jared Verse last year was great for the Rams. I think if James Pierce can keep his head on track, I think he'll be very good. He was a first rounder by by Atlanta this year at 26. I again, I think all these guys are pretty much the same player. To be honest, I don't know why teams are kind of afraid of them, but a lot of these speed rushers end up being really good. Scorton to the Panthers is a really good pick. They need pass rush help bad. A lot of fans were unhappy. They took McMillan 8th overall. That they wanted to take Jim Walker. Didn't work out. However, they get Scorton in the second round. 53rd pick in the second round, Benjamin Morrison, corner out of Notre Dame, goes to Tampa. I like his pick. I think he was a solid corner. I think he was like my 4th or 5th corner in this class. Tampa needs help in that secondary, and they got it with Benjamin Morrison. The Trey Harris pick, Robert Charles was pretty good. I like the Lions taking Tate Rutledge. He's an interior offensive line piece. Seems like a guy that Dan Campbell's going to really like. A pick I really like was Mike Green goes to the Ravens, 59th overall. I was surprised this guy slid. I get why, because he only had really 1 year of elite production and it came at Marshall. But I think this guy is a very good pass rusher. I think the Ravens got an absolute steal. I think John Harbaugh and company are going to really like that guy. They needed another pass rusher, for sure. Obviously, you see him going defense heavy in the first 2 rounds. They take a safety and Starks in the first round, and they get Mike Green, a pass rusher. They have some young pass rushers over there. Haven't really worked out. Dave Owa was a former first rounder. David Ohabo, the guy we thought would go really high in the draft. Tyruson's Achilles at the combine. Ends up slipping to the 3rd round. Hasn't really gotten going yet. They need some help off the edge, and they get it with Mike Green. Also, I love the Commanders taking Trey Amos, the corner out of Ole Miss. I had him as an early to mid-second round guy at the very worst. I thought he would end up slipping into the very end of the first round. I think he's a very solid corner, and he goes to the Washington Commanders. They needed another corner. It goes to Commanders for getting that with Trey Amos. On to round 3. Giants open up with Darius Alexander. I think that was a good pick. He was the best player on the board once the round turned over to the 3rd round. Defensive tackle. I think he's solid. Giants really beefing up that defensive line. And other picks, obviously, they're kind of far and few between as we go on. I like the Bills taking Landon Jackson, a defensive end out of Arkansas. I think he's a solid defensive end. I like the Bills addressing defense. They get a solid cover guy that they needed in Maxwell Harrison in the 1st round. And at Kentucky, now you get Landon Jackson in the 3rd. I think they need one more pass rusher, and they get it. Give him. Carolina doubles up on pass rush help in the day 2, getting Princely Umanamilan out of Ole Miss. I think he's a solid pass rusher. Gets Carolina that pass rush help that they really, really need. I like the Jaguars taking Wyatt Millam, offensive lineman out of West Virginia. He may end up being a guard. He played both tackle and guard in college. I think he could be a pretty solid tackle. May end up moving to guard, but I think either place he will be very solid. Wyatt Millam to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Got to protect Trevor Lawrence, who's had two straight years end with injury. I also like the Patriots draft a lot overall, but they take Jared Wilson, who I thought was the best center in this class out of Georgia. In the 3rd round, Cole Strange is very unreliable. He's always hurt. Also played guard in college. He's not really too caught up at the center position. Now you get Jared Wilson, who I think is a very solid center at 95. Next pick for the Falcons, I thought was very good. They got Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. I overall don't hate what the Falcons did. They get a steal in Jalen Walker at 15. I think they overpaid to get James Pierce trading back into the 1st round. However, I do think if that guy can get himself together, he will be a very good player. And I like Xavier Watts a lot. I think he's a very good safety. I think he'll be very good in this league. Falcons get him in the 3rd round. You put him next to Jesse Bates. You possibly pair Walker and James Pierce. All of a sudden, that defense that was really bad last year doesn't look so bad. Plus, you have AJ Terrell, who's an all-pro corner as well. So those are the picks I liked in the 3rd round. And then the day 3 picks that I like. I already talked about Quinn Ewers somehow falling to the 7th round. But in the 4th round, I love the Giants taking running back Cam Scatterville out of Arizona State. This guy, we saw him have that crazy game in the college football playoff game. This guy is really hard to tackle. Big yak guy. He's a very good running back. I think will be a very solid back in this league. You pair him with Tyrone Tracy, who played pretty well last year. If Tracy can figure out his fumbling issues, Giants could have a really good running game for a long time. I respect the Jaguars taking Jack Kaiser, linebacker out of Notre Dame. He's a very solid linebacker. Jacksonville, that roster was really bad last year. And this year, you move up to take Travis Hunter, who, again, I think is a bit overhyped, but nonetheless a great player. It looks like he'll be playing receiver for them mainly. He's going to be, I think, a star receiver in this league. You get a solid offensive lineman in Wyatt Millen, and then you get a good linebacker in Jack Kaiser. Actually, by the way, speaking of the Jaguars, Trevor Etienne's brother, Trevor Etienne, was drafted by Carolina. So they add to that deep running back room. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot else. I like Billy Bowman, the safety out of Oklahoma. He goes to the Falcons. Falcons are taking another safety. Barrett Carter, linebacker. And Missouri goes to the Bengals. I think that was a good pick. I think the Bengals had a good draft. You get 3, I think, players on defense that will help you down the line. And Shamar Stewart. You get Barrett Carter. And then, who was the other piece that they got? Let me roll back to the second round. They took Demetrius Knight, and you pick up took a guard in the third round as well that I liked. And Giants, I'm going to talk about their draft in a little bit. Other than that, I think Gunnar Helm will be a solid tight end. He goes in the 4th round at Texas to the Tennessee Titans. I like that. Jets actually took a pretty interesting prospect. Malachi Moore, safety out of Alabama. He seems pretty boomer bust. I think he could be really solid, but he also could flame out of the league. So that's what I've heard about him. So we'll see what happens. Jets have had the hole at safety for kind of a few years now, even though the defense was one of the top units in the league. Safety was by far the weak link on their defense. And then continuing on with day 3, was not a whole lot there. I like what Giants taking Marcus Mibau, offensive lineman out of Purdue. He played pretty much every position on the offensive line at Purdue. Giants need help on the outline, and they get with Marcus Mibau. I think a steal in the 5th round. I thought he'd honestly go at the end of the 2nd round, maybe early 3rd round. I like the Rams taking Chris Paul, linebacker out of Ole Miss. And again, this is a guy I thought would go at the very least. I didn't think he would even get to maybe the early part of the 3rd round. They get him at the end of the 5th. Solid linebacker. Rams continue to rebuild that defense piece by piece. And the Rams are a good team. Maybe we'll see if he gets there right before Chris Paul, which is probably very likely because Chris Paul's at the end of his career. And other than that, now we're at the very end here. 6th round. I like the Dolphins taking a flyer on Ollie Gordon, running back out of Oklahoma State. I think he's a solid back. They could use a second running back behind Devon A-Chain since he's always injured, and they get one with Ollie Gordon. The Ravens take a kicker, Tyler Loop, out of Kentucky. So we'll see if that spells in Justin Tucker's career. At least in Baltimore, he's dealing with some off the field stuff, and he just fell off a cliff last year when it comes to his on the field play, as well. And I think that's pretty much gonna be it for day 2 and day 3 picks. 7th round, there wasn't really anybody I was too familiar with outside of Quinn Ewers, and but I guess the only thing I have to say is congratulations to Kobe Minor, a defensive back out of Auburn. He was Mr. Irrelevant this year. He goes to the New England Patriots with pick number 257 in the NFL draft. Last thing I'm going to talk about today, again, I don't like giving out grades for drafts because simply we don't know until they hit the field, but the two drafts that I see have a hard time believing that will not end up being good, and were very good. First of all, as much as I hate to say it, most of the New England Patriots, they get, I think, an absolute dog in Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU. That guy seems like a guy that I would love to play with, saying like, I'm going to die to protect Drake May. I've seen some of his press conferences. I'm not worried about the short arms. I think he was one of the 10 best players in the entire class, by far the best tackle in the class. They take him 4th overall. That's a great pick. They had a major need at left tackle. As bad as their line was last year, now you draft Campbell, you sign Morgan Moses, you move back to guard. All of a sudden, the line doesn't look so bad. And then you get Travion Henderson in the 2nd round. You get yourself a solid running back. I like him next to Ramondre Stevenson. They take a receiver out of Washington State in the 3rd round, and Kyle Williams, who I think is pretty good. They have a very busy receiver room now. You rolled in Stephon Diggs. You drafted Jalen Polk and Javon Baker last year. You still have Kendrick Bourne on the roster. Now you draft Kyle Williams, a very busy room. Keyshawn Boutte is a former late-round pick from 2 years ago you still have on the roster. So they're probably going to have to cut 2 guys. We'll see what they do there. And also in the 3rd round, you get Jared Wilson. I think he's a solid center. I think he will start day 1 for them over Cole Strange. So I think they did a very good job. I also like what the New York Giants did overall. So you got Abdul Carr third overall. Now you have a dangerous defensive line with him, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns. You trade back up in the first round without giving up a whole lot to get Jackson Dart, who I do think will be a very good quarterback if in the right situation. In the third round, you take Darius Alexander, who's a solid defensive tackle. Again, beefing up that defensive line. And then the fourth round, you get Cam Scatterba, who I think is a very good running back. You pair him with Tyrone Tracy. That takes the pressure off whoever the quarterback is. Where it's either going to be Russell Wilson, who thrives in the kind of a West Coast run first offense. You saw his best years in Seattle, of course. Marshawn Lynch. If James Winston plays games, that probably a good idea to not have him throw the ball very much because that guy loves throwing interceptions. Or Jackson Dart, who of course is a rookie. In the fifth round, you take Marcus Mabow, who I think is a solid tackle at Purdue that I think very good value. You put him across from Andrew Thomas. You have Michael Schmitz at guard, me at center. All of a sudden, the line's starting to maybe come together. So I think those were the two best drafts, in my opinion. That's all I got for you guys today. We'll be going live every day this week. I don't have sports buzz this week, or really ever. I don't think anymore. So I'll be back on Thursdays. We'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow, so don't miss it. Until next time, so long, and have a great day.